All right, guys, so we're gonna roast an organic Uganda. I've been working on this one. I think I've dialed in this profile, so stick around and let's check this out. Okay, so what we've got here is a phenomenal organic Uganda. The flavor profiles on this is some rich chocolate. When I purchased this Uganda, what was told, or kind of what some of the previous roasters were talking about, was don't go too light on it. Now, last time I roasted this, I think I pulled it on the light side, and it was good, but I'm gonna drag it out a little bit longer once we get into first crack, and I'm gonna see how far beyond. Maybe I'm gonna pull it around 20 or maybe like 21% to see if I can get a little more flavor out of it. I'm gonna drop it in at around 155. My air is at 50. My drum speed is at 75. Air here. And I'm gonna let it soak for 1 minute and then hit the gas at the 1 minute mark after the soak to 6.5 kPa. So where are we at? We're at 365. Like I've mentioned in previous videos, don't add your beans to the hopper unless you're about, where you're about 10 degrees away. Otherwise, you'll start to scorch your beans up top. And all right, here we go. We got 4 more degrees. I've got my finger on the timer. I've got my finger on the release, and I'm gonna go in about 3 seconds. Here we go, and off we go. All right, they're in the hopper here. All right, perfect. Now, this Uganda, I'm curious how it's gonna go, because I roasted the Colombia, I roasted the Burundi this morning, and now I'm getting into this Uganda, and all of my roasts have been different because of the weather. It's chillier in Los Angeles today, it's windier in Los Angeles today, and it's just a little bit harder to maintain and actually mimic or mirror the previous profiles. But that's the job. That's how we kind of learn and how we modify as we go. But this one's actually looking like, if you check this out, the lines are sticking with it. It's pretty much the same. Like I'd mentioned, I haven't done this one in 2 weeks. And let's hit our heat right now at the 1 minute mark. Record the 165. Somebody previously asked me a question about the Colombia, was why is my first crack hitting around 395? And something that you'll see in your roast is generally the denser the beans are, the longer it takes for them to hit first crack. That's not necessarily true for everything, but it's a good kind of general rule. And when you're purchasing your beans, you'll notice the elevation, the altitude is something that is oftentimes referred to. The higher the altitude generally, the more robust the bean, the denser the bean. So these beans, this Uganda bean was grown at 1,700 to 2,200 meters. That's pretty high elevation. And that's generally standard when you're talking about like African beans. The higher the elevation, the better. So I made a video a long time ago, but I'll repeat something I had mentioned. When you're buying like really good specialty coffee, you're purchasing beans that are a little more expensive than you would, let's say, if you were buying Peet's Coffee, Starbucks Coffee, all the other, brands, right? Generally, what you're looking at here is you're looking at McDonald's for coffee, right? The beans are grown at a lower elevation. They're grown fast because they need that kind of quantity, because they have to fulfill a lot of orders all over the world. And the beans generally are grown quickly and then harvested quickly and then roasted to a darker roast, because if you roasted them to a lighter roast, they would taste like crap, for lack of a better word. All right, I have to make an adjustment here. I'm going to go to the 6.0. All right, bringing her down. And when you're doing that little knob, sometimes it's a little tough to kind of like lock it in perfectly. All right, recorded that. Keep that in mind when you're like buying Starbucks beans and you're buying coffee bean or whatever. These coffee beans are generally roasted dark. It's just like McDonald's. They basically remove any of the possible imperfections by roasting it or cooking it to a dark or like a well done temperature. And then once they do that, they basically make it so this way everything tastes the same. And that's their goal. That's their goal as an industry, is for everything to taste exactly the same. And if that's what you want to do with your beans, if you want to do dark roast across the board, more power to you. But for me, I want to be able to taste the nuances of these specialty beans, because I focus on this kind of business model where I'm roasting and I am not focusing on basically selling high quantities of coffee, I don't really worry about my margins all that much, so I invest a lot of my money in my beans. So my beans generally are anywhere from like, I think low end I get them for is like $6.50 per pound. And I've spent over $10 per pound on the beans. Now I do transfer that cost to a lot of the people that purchase coffee from me, but generally that's a way to run your business if that's what you want to do. If you have a cafe, maybe that's not what you want to do because you're selling higher quantities, but I don't sell high quantity. Just keep an eye on here. If we're looking at this, let's just take a look at the graph right now and take a break from that conversation. Everything is looking good. I'm really happy because, like I said, outside it's a bit windy, and if you see my ROR is sticking with the previous ROR, right here my bean temp is just rising as I'm going, which is great. I'm gonna make my shift to the 5 kPa here, sticking with my previous, and this little dip right here, which you'll see in the thing, I'm pretty sure that was me pulling out the dryer. I had a huge dip and then boom, right back up. It's also one of the reasons why I don't dick around with the dryer too often, because I don't feel like it really makes that big of a difference. Now, if I didn't have Artisan, you gotta rely on your dryer. Maybe I'm giving myself a handicap because if I lost Artisan, I'd be fucked. but the reality is that, all right, we're at dry end right here. Just checking. All right, guys, I want to interrupt this roast real quick to tell you guys about this roaster itself. I've mentioned this in previous videos. This is the Yoshan roaster. If you're interested in getting your hands on a roaster like this, it's significantly less than buying like a Diedrich or Probat, which will cost you anywhere from $12,000 to $20,000 to kind of entry level your way into being a coffee roaster. I was able to get this roaster and this awesome supply table, or like display table, for less than $5,000 delivered door to door, right? Big crate delivered right to my garage. So if you're interested in getting one of these roasters and maybe just dabbling in roasting, I can get you a discount because I make these videos and I talk about roasting. Yoshan has offered me a discount for anybody that watches these videos. So if you're interested, email me, rob@ocdcoffeeclub.com. I can get you a discount, I can get you a free gift, I can get you an extra warranty on this roaster, but you just gotta reach out to me, rob@ocdcoffeeclub.com. You'll see my email just below as well. All right, thanks guys. The reality is that I do have Artisan, right? And I do rely on it, and I think that most professional roasters, if I lump myself into that category, they do rely on software to help them, whether it's Cropster or Artisan. And I highly recommend doing it because I'm lowering to 4 kPa. I highly recommend doing that because using a software to monitor your coffee roasting profiles is the best way to create consistency, and that's what this game is. This game is creating consistency. If your coffee is consistently good, if you're able to replicate your profiles, it's like being a chef at a restaurant. You create a recipe, and then you teach people that recipe, and they don't deviate from that recipe. And so that's what you're doing. And you might have a good sous chef that you allow to kind of like tweak things, and then once, if that sous chef tweaks it and he improves on it, then then you make that modification, and then everybody gets on board with that modification. Got it? I've worked in the restaurant business, so I totally get it. And that's actually what I love about roasting coffee. If you love to cook and you like to tinker with things, that combination is basically coffee roasting in a nutshell. All right, we're looking good. Again, everything is on par with what we were doing before. Maybe just a little bit slower. If you could see the line here, if I use my mouse, there's like my previous line is the one that's in the background, and my new line is the darker one that's happening right here alongside of it. I'm probably 8 to 10 seconds slower because of the wind, because of the cool temperature. My beans are probably slightly cooler as well. I'm gonna drop down to 2.8. Here's where I think I looked at the dryer, and I'm probably not going to see that dip this time, which is normal. Yep, see, we skipped right over that. Somebody asked the question about this fan on my roaster, and that the fan doesn't, with the Yoshan roaster, the fan doesn't necessarily Beyond 40, I think he mentioned, or 50, the setting, it didn't really have that much of an indication, but he used this specific kind of device to measure his, I'm going to raise my air to 70, to measure the airflow. Now, I agree with him that it's probably not all that much. And look, if you're using a device to measure your airflow, you know for a fact that it's obvious, whatever you're doing, it's accurate. However, when I raise my airflow, I see it change. Like, I just hit it to 70 and look what it just did. So I don't know what's happening here. This is kind of a little bit, oh, we got first crack. Sorry, I got to record that. So I raised it to 70 and I'm seeing a physical difference in the bean temperature. And I'm also seeing a change in my, all right, we're full into first crack. I got to drop down to 2.5 right here. I'm going to go down a little bit lower to 2.2. So this is, okay, good learning lesson here. Something happened that I was not expecting. Everything was looking perfect. And then all of a sudden, I had, I went down to 2.2. And then what happened was I've got this uptick right here that came out of nowhere when I raised the air to 70. And I'm getting another one. I'm getting big upticks here. Now, I don't know if this is coming because the air outside is maybe sucking air through and pulling it out and creating a little bit more convection inside of my roaster. But this is interesting, and I'm wondering how this is actually going to play out in terms of the flavor. Okay, so I'm supposed to adjust here to 80. And this is part of it, guys. Like, you're gonna be doing this. You're gonna be making adjustments here and there to your roasts, and it goes haywire sometimes. Now, this is not a haywire like, oh, let's throw this out haywire. This is just, this is interesting. Like, I wonder what happened here. Now, what I'm generally gonna do is I'm gonna do another roast. I'm gonna start going into this, and I'm gonna see if that exact thing happens again. All right, I'm at 15%. I dropped it last thing around 17. I'm gonna let my development get up to around 20. So I'm at 17 now, where I would normally pull it. And it's interesting because see how it's at 420. This moved quicker. There's something that happened here. All right, let me see here. I'm at 18. I'm already at 420, so I'm actually gonna drop it now because my temp is going up fast. I'm gonna drop it 19. Because like I had discussed in previous videos, you don't want to make huge modifications, huge changes to your roast every time. Last time I dropped this, I had my first crack was at 387. Now maybe I was late. I was talking and However, even if my first crack was, a couple of seconds earlier, I pulled it out with roughly a 19-degree difference. This time, I pulled it out at almost a 33-degree difference. So that's a huge change from previous to this one. And if we take a look, and as they start to cool, we'll take a look. I'm just going to turn this off. This is always good to see. So you've got a 50% in your green, which is working through your, up until you get to Maillard. Maillard's at 30%, and roughly, this is what, when you're talking about your first crack here, this is your development phase. Light roast would be anywhere from 15% to like maybe 17 or 18%. Darker or medium roast, I should say, is something beyond that. And then the darker roasts generally start around like 23%, 24% into where you would hit second crack. I never really go there. But let's see what the color looks like, right? So they're not super hot, just a little bit beyond light roast. So, this is why we look, right? We check to see, you scan your roast. This little MF was kind of hiding out somewhere, probably got stuck in my roaster, and then somehow just made it out when I dropped it into the cooling tray. So we're gonna just toss this little guy because that happens. Like, proof is in the pudding. Let's see what happens with this roast. Let's see how it tastes. This was what, if you refer to, I have the book here. Definitely good reading material. Scott Rouse, Coffee Roasting. This is what he would refer to as a flick. Flick and then a crash. Oftentimes that'll have a negative effect on the coffee in that it'll make it taste kind of just like generic coffee and you'll lose a lot of the nuance. But sometimes, and even he'll talk about it in the book, and sometimes even guys will talk about it, like sometimes you have that flick, sometimes you have that crash, and the coffee still tastes great. So, But generally, you don't want to see this. Generally, you want that perfect ROR. Anyway, all right, I hope you found this informative. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, guys. I'm happy to help you out.